Upon awakening in a forest, a menu appears before Kelvin that conveys a message from the goddess of reincarnation, explaining his reincarnation circumstances, the world he inhabits, and his stats. Observing his stats on the menu and discovering that he is a summoner, the menu recommends that he journey to the nearby town and register as an adventurer at the Adventurers Guild located there. Without wasting any time, the two make their way to the nearby town, where Kelvin discovers that his former self had tamed the goddess of reincarnation, which he finds quite embarrassing. After reaching the town of Parth, Kelvin shares how Melfina became the goddess of reincarnation and how he persuaded her to be his tamed ally. It is also revealed that Kelvin sacrificed his memories from his previous life to gain additional skill points. He subsequently inquires whether he would be able to summon her. However, Melfina states that Kelvin cannot do so at this moment, as his MP level is insufficient. Shortly after, Kelvin converses with the guild receptionist at the bustling Adventurers Guild to complete his registration. Thanks to his understand language and literacy skills, Kelvin is able to read and write in that world, permitting him to register himself in the guild. To prevent drawing attention from the nation lords due to his title of summoner, Kelvin lists himself as a green mage. Once he is registered as an F-rank adventurer, the receptionist explains the guild's ranking system and relevant information. For his first assignment, Kelvin opts to hunt blue slimes for the initial quest he will undertake. Afterward, Kelvin acquires a wooden rod from the weapons store and proceeds to the grassy plains beyond Parth to look for some blue slimes. Upon discovering a few, Kelvin activates his S-ranked appraisal eye on them to learn their stats. Learning from Melfina that one must obtain a monster's consent by weakening them first, Kelvin chooses to refrain from using his magic and instead attempts to attack them with his wooden rod. Nevertheless, this effort fails, resulting in him being struck in the stomach by one of the slimes. Undeterred by this setback, Kelvin persists in battling it and eventually manages to form a contract with the slime. He names his new slime companion Clotho and realizes that he can communicate with his companions through unspoken connections. After designating that ability as his servant network, Kelvin summons Clotho, and together they defeat the slimes present in the vicinity. Returning to the town with sufficient gold for lodging and meals at an inn, Kelvin takes a side route down an alleyway and discovers a slave trader displaying his slaves for sale. One of them, a half-blooded elf, draws Kelvin's attention, but he gives it no thought. Later, Kelvin secures a room at the Spirit's Song Inn and partakes in a meal there. At the Adventurers Guild, Kelvin discovers from Anj that he has been elevated to E rank, but shows worry about taking on higher-ranked missions without forming a group. This concern arose primarily because Kelvin had concealed his identity as a summoner to avoid attracting unwanted attention. Observing that Kelvin will soon be aiming for D rank, Anj recommends that he upgrade his gear before taking the necessary steps toward his new aspiration. Recognizing the council, Kelvin requests to undertake a D rank quest. It is then that an adventurer named Cashel proposes he accept the Black Ghost Knight quest. Following his discussion with Anj about a recent successful adventure, Cashel introduces himself to Kelvin as a D-rank adventurer. A conversation among some adventurers in the guild reveals that Cashel possesses the strength of a B rank and is known as a rookie crusher. Cashel invites Kelvin to join his team. However, Anj warns against it, noting that the Black Ghost Knight is supposedly tougher than the rest. Conversely, Kelvin turns down the invitation. Kelvin utilizes his appraisal eye on Cashel to examine his stats and foreboding title. Thus, in response to this, Kelvin proposes they compete to see who can defeat the Black Ghost Knight first. Cashel agrees to the conditions, albeit with slight hesitation, and departs as Kelvin begins to strategize how he will manage the encounter. Cashel reconvenes outside the guild with his two dubious party members. Gmel updates Cashel on Kelvin's stats and abilities, while the other member, Raj, is directed to act as the gentle muscle against Kelvin. Nonetheless, he resists being gentle and asserts that he will deal with it in his usual manner. As dusk settles within the Wicked Spirit's castle, Cashel's group arrives in the castle's hallway, just prior to the throne room, where they stumble upon the remains of undead skeletons strewn across the floor. Kelvin emerges from his hiding spot, staff in hand, and Cashel's group internally acknowledges that he is a wind mage and considers how they will confront him. However, Kelvin calls out to the group that they are hunting him, leading them to assume that Kelvin is pursuing the bounty on the heads of Cashel's party members. Indifferent to that, Kelvin provokes the group, prompting Raj to step up and attempt to assault Kelvin, only to fall victim to his swampy floor trap known as Mudvine. Cashel deduces that Kelvin utilized his concealment skill to cast the spell, and acting on his instincts, Gmel fearfully escapes the area, only to encounter the recently evolved Clotho. A flashback illustrates that after Kelvin eliminated enough monsters, Clotho transformed from a blue slime into a slime Glatonia. Back in the current situation, Clotho swiftly defeats Gmel, and then Raj manages to escape his murky imprisonment only to be ensnared by Clotho. Consequently, Cashel faces off against Kelvin, who discerns his opponent's motives for hunting adventurers as they all find themselves bound. Wasting no more time, Kelvin enters the room where the Black Ghost Knight was located, and after activating his appraisal eye on him, discovers that his name is Gerard, along with his stats and skills. Kelvin expresses his interest in recruiting him. This prompts a civil discussion between the two, during which Kelvin learns some reasons why Gerard turned into a monster. Desiring to forge a contract with Gerard, Kelvin engages him in a duel, aided by Melfina's guidance and Clotho. During their fight, Gerard reminisces about the downfall of the kingdom he once served, known as Alcarl, when an elven emissary from the western continent named Gildora arrived and requested him to join the Lyzia Empire to annihilate the Empire of Dermis. The king turned down the proposal, yet Gildora cautioned about the repercussions of such a refusal. Shortly after, the kingdom succumbed to devastation, and Gerard's wife Betty and daughter Connie died. Returning to the present, Gerard pledges to seek vengeance for the land of Alcarl, which binds him to the duty of the living. Nonetheless, Kelvin overcomes him with combined efforts from Clotho. The following day, Kelvin submits the quest concerning the Black Ghost Knight and discovers that Cashel's group has been imprisoned and faces likely execution for their offenses. While Kelvin celebrates the successful completion of his quest, Ainge informs him that he is set to receive a further promotion from the Guildmaster. At the top of the stairway, Kelvin encounters a well-dressed elderly man.